He woke to the taste of metal and ash, a heat that wasn't the honest heat of a forge but something feverish that crawled over the skin. Tanjiro pushed himself from a drift of powdered glass that glittered like frost, and for a heartbeat he thought it was dawn, until the sky above him shifted, not as clouds shift, but as plates of dark steel slide over a furnace. His hand found the Nichiren blade before the thought finished forming. The smell told him as much as the sight: oil, ozone, old smoke, and beneath that a human fear boiled down until only the bitter remained. He'd smelled it in winter on a mountain road. He'd smelled it the night his life turned. A shadow fell, not the soft shape of a crow or the quick tilt of a branch, but a moving cliff. The figure was a man only because the mind would accept no other word. 8 feet of ceramite armor scored by claws and scripture. Helm lenses the green of glacial ice. A grill where his mouth should be crackled to life. Identify yourself. Tanjiro bowed on instinct. Hayori tugged close by the furnace wind. Tanjiro Kamado. Demon Slayer. I don't know how I came here. The giant's head tilted, the way a tower might consider an ant that insists on being polite. More figures loomed through the heat haze. Blue-armored brethren, a skull-helmed priest swinging a smoking censer, a robed figure whose face was a bouquet of brass lenses and twitching metal limbs. Questions began: psyker, heresy, sanction, words like iron doors. Then the sky tore. It bled, not red but colors the eye should refuse. Whispers came on the wind like fishhooks. Shapes slouched through the rip with a hungry joy that had never known sunlight. The giants lifted brutal guns that coughed thunder and fire, and their priest roared prayers that sounded like war drums. Tanjiro didn't understand their language, but he knew the smell that rolled off those things. If demons had a weather, this was it. He breathed. The heat of the place tried to shake him. Breath made it steady. Flame licked up the Nichiren steel with a soft rush. He ran, feet light, eyes soft, shoulders low the way Kadaki had taught him, and met the first creature with a step so clean it felt like opening a sliding door at dawn. The blade sang. The demon came apart like bad cloth in a good wind. He moved where the line bent, not where the glory was thick. A whip-tongued horror threaded the seam under a giant's pauldron. Tanjiro slid, cut, rose, the flame a sunrise in a room with no windows. The giant looked down in a flicker of surprise and then crashed a fist the size of a bucket into another nightmare skull. "Little brother," a voice boomed in someone's private channel, and though Tanjiro didn't yet know the words, he felt the shape of them. They fought until the rip clenched shut like a wounded eye. Silence landed heavy. Servants with iron masks hurried to torch the places where the world had thinned. The priest approached, skullhelm unreadable. "You fight with fire," he said. "I fight with memory," Tanjiro answered before he could stop the truth. "The fire is just how it looks." They took him aboard a ship that hummed like a storm locked in a bottle. Corridors breathed recycled air and incense. The robed machine priest asked to examine his blade, brass fingers reverent. Tanjiro hesitated. This sword had cut bread and monsters both, but he offered it hilt first, because trust has to start somewhere. "Not warp reactive," the priest murmured. "Heat signatures. Anomalous." The sword returned to Tanjiro's palms with a weight that always felt like home, and his shoulders loosened. An inquisitor spoke to him in a gallery of cracked glass lit by starlight. Her coat was black as a verdict. Her eyes looked 1 second longer than most people's. "Tell me of your demons." "They were human once," Tanjiro said. "Hunger and fear made them cruel. Sunlight burns them, but sometimes if you listen long enough, you can find the human thread still there and tug." "Mercy," she said, tasting it like a foreign spice. "Expensive currency. Spend it carefully." The galaxy didn't wait for definitions. A distress call tore through the ship's bones. A shrine world choking on a hymn turned inside out. They descended through a dusk that smelled of incense and panic. The basilica's stained glass lay underfoot as multicolored dust. A sorcerer in a robe of teeth and starling wings had woven a shield from stolen voices. Bolter fire died against it like rain against stone. The chaplain's litanies hammered the vaults. The Astartes advanced anyway because that is what they are. Tanjiro listened. Under artillery and prayer he found the quick rabbit heartbeats of trapped civilians in the catacombs below, the ragged scrape of fingernails against stone. That scent, thin, high, child-bright, cut deeper than any warp blade. Breath in, fill the belly, remember kettle steam and cedar smoke, and Nezuko's forehead pressed against his. Breath out, let the world steady. He moved. Fourth form, blooming flame undulation, through a net of impossible angles. Seventh form, sunflower thrust, straight through a shrieking knot of curses. 11th form, fake rainbow, split into mirrors, offer the wrong one to be broken. He climbed steps that were not there until he needed them and arrived within breath of the sorcerer. Little candle, the sorcerer hissed through a smile that had too many edges. You burn in a storm. Storm's end, Tanjiro said, and his smile was the one he used for angry demons he still hoped to save. They danced. The sorcerer made architecture from screams. Tanjiro edited it into quiet. A staff wrote comets. A blade crossed their names out. Then the sorcerer tried the oldest knife. Mother. And it almost found his ribs. Pain surged hot and clean. He staggered, then remembered that memory is not only a wound but a hearth. He breathed the 13th form, the circle that begins again at the end, and his blade burned with a heat that felt like honesty. He cut through the shield without touching the voices, trimming the curse away like dead wood so the living could grow. The chaplain's crozius fell like a bell, and the sorcerer's doctrine shattered with his bones. In the catacombs the sobbing turned to breathing. On the street above, children watched him as if he were a saint painted in a new style. He knelt to them, rolled his sleeves, and showed them how to breathe with hands on their bellies, how to feel the bucket fill and pour, how to keep panic from doing the counting. The chaplain watched and did not interrupt. You teach war like a lullaby, he said later, not unkindly. The name Little Brother stuck. At first it was a joke in the squad vox. Soon it was a position in the formation. The giants learned to place themselves where his courage outpaced his armor, close enough to catch, far enough not to cage. The tech priest requested the blade again and learned to say, please. The Void's men taught him cards and superstitions and how to cheat only when the other person deserved it. He learned the smell of Astartes' armor, oil, incense, lemon-clean solvent, and the way servitors hummed tuneless lullabies while scrubbing deck plates. He learned to sleep anywhere, under a stair that rearranged itself when no one looked, in a cargo net that felt like a hammock, folded like a prayer against a bulkhead that thudded like a giant's heart. On a fortress moon under hammered iron skies, he stitched a failing defense line with motion. When a shell knocked Brother Hadrian flat, Tanjiro got a shoulder under a slab without thinking. You weigh as much as a prayer, Hadrian grunted through the vox. Prayers can be heavy, Tanjiro said, and the Marine actually laughed while he rose. He failed, too. On a white ash river whirled a greater demon rose like a cathedral that had learned to hate. His blade sang and bit and could not reach the heart hidden miles behind a ribcage of lies. The Astartes took the kill at a price that hollowed their ranks. Afterward he sat with scraped knuckles and breath that wouldn't smooth. The chaplain lowered himself to the rubble like a man who had learned to sit with grief. You did not fall back, he said. I made them hold for me, Tanjiro whispered. They chose to hold, the chaplain answered. The emperor convinces, he does not compel. There's a difference. He carried that into smaller battles that didn't make reports. On a moon with copper leaves, a fox-masked girl watched him practice at dusk and copied his breathing in bright, clumsy gulps. Can I learn? He saw the weapon the galaxy had made of him and set it down long enough to be a teacher. Yes, he said. First we learn to listen. She stood on the palisade with him when the thin things came in the night, and the way she drew breath wasn't pretty yet, but it was brave, and sometimes that is enough. The Inquisitor visited without ceremony on a night when the second sun had just dipped and everything felt fragile. Do you want to go home? She asked, a genuine question, not a test. He looked up at stars that were wrong and right at once. Yes, he said. Nezuko might be waiting. Or time moves differently and my family is a story people tell to be brave. He touched the nick on his blade no tech priest could smooth away. Until I know, I'll be a good story. They searched in the way people in this age search, with auguries and mathematics and faith. Rumors traveled faster. May the little brother walk this road became a blessing scratched on bunker walls. Astartes carved tiny checkered squares on pauldron rims for luck. The tech priest added a footnote to a machine hymn: when faith meets discipline, expect small, stubborn miracles of maintenance. Then the hinge of his journey showed itself. A silver ship cut from prayer and steel arrived at the edge of a system gone sour. Gray knights walked its decks, another kind of giant, runes shimmering along their armor like reluctant dawn. Their Grand Master took off his helm and surprised Tanjiro by having the eyes of shallow rivers. "We have dreamt a door that belongs to you," he said. The door stood where the warp pinched like a muscle. One side breathed furnace air. The other tasted of cedar and kettle steam. Snow's memory blew across his face. His knees went soft. The knights formed a circle and chanted words that bent the room. The Astartes stood shoulder to shoulder with them, a choir of thunder. The Inquisitor pressed something cold into Tanjiro's hand, a coin stamped with her sigil, and scratched on the back, crooked as a child's drawing, the outline of a checkered Haori. "You owe us letters," she said, as if letters could cross such distances. He bowed to each of them, more promise than ceremony. The priest who had first called him brother, the machine priest who had learned to ask gently, the void's men who had taught him to laugh on days when laughter seemed irresponsible, the fox-masked girl whose stance was already better. "Thank you for letting me carry a lantern," he said. "We didn't let you," the chaplain rumbled. "You brought it anyway." The door opened. For a beat the worlds braided, a gauntlet on his shoulder on one side, a small hand on the other. He stepped and the cold was like forgiveness. Snow sifted. Pines held their breath. Nezuko ran and collided with him, and the weight of her against his chest was the only heat that mattered. He pressed his forehead to hers and laughed like someone who'd been lost and permitted the word home. That night, in the house that remembered him, he lit a lantern and set it in the window. He told Nezuko the story until she slept, her breath steady as tide. He set the Nicaran blade across his knees and breathed the galaxy into his lungs and let it out as a blessing for men who walk without a sun and carry dawn in armor. Far away, on a line etched into a black horizon, a marine with a skull for a faceplate paused mid-patrol, looked up at wrong stars and smelled, just for a heartbeat, cedar smoke and tea. "Walk well, little brother," the chaplain murmured, not sure why the Vox felt warm. Morning brought work because home does not erase duty. It gives it a place to rest. Demons still prowled the margins of forests, and people still woke afraid of the night. He stepped out into the crisp bright and felt the ache of leaving in his ribs and the gratitude of returning in his throat. Mercy is expensive currency, the Inquisitor had warned. He had spent it like a fool across a broken galaxy and found that the only way to keep any was to keep spending. He would teach the children on this mountain to breathe like a steady fire. He would cut paths where night felt absolute. And sometimes, when mist climbed out of the valley like incense, he would close his eyes and listen for the thunder of distant boots, and the memory would be enough to make him smile. Maybe one day the door would open the other way. Maybe a giant would stand where the garden path bent and lean down, very carefully, to accept a bowl of soup from a boy who remembered the shapes of their prayers. Until then there were lanterns to light. There were stories to tell that made courage feel a little less lonely. There were breaths to take, the simple miracle that held two universes together. Inhale, exhale, until even storms had to pause and listen.